Joe Bustos has been the state representative for House District 112, which covers parts of Awendaw, Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's Island, and the Isle of Palms for the past 2 years. Now he's seeking re-election to tackle issues in his district. I speak exclusively with the representative for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
State Representative Joe Bustos, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, sir. Obviously, you're a state representative for House District 112.
That's correct.
And for those people who don't know what this House District 112 consists of,
It's approximately half of Mount Pleasant on the water side toward the beach, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, and then extends all the way down Highway 17 on the eastern side to Awendaw.
Sure.
And then it makes one little jog off of Highway 17 into part of Snee Farm.
oh yes, I know about Snee Farm very well.
Yeah.
You've been on, obviously as a House representative, that is, for the past 2 years.
That's correct.
Why re-election?
Well, it's taken me one session to really kind of learn how things work, and I was very fortunate that I was able to get one bill all the way through to the governor's desk, so I felt good about that. And I have a number of other bills that I'd like to submit, and some that I've submitted, but time ran out before the end of the session, so I'm going to refile those.
What bills will be ideal for your district now?
Right now, of course, I think it's germane to the whole state, is I have submitted the gang violence and criminal enterprise bill, which will give law enforcement the ability to pursue action against not only the criminal themselves, but their support base,
Right.
and people who are supporting them. And then the others are taxes and the economy and schools. They're very important.
Well, let me jump into the economy right now. What is that like right now in your district?
Well, the economy in the district, in District 112, like everywhere else in the state, and indeed the country, is hard. People are working, and their money isn't going as far. They're having to sacrifice vacations and perhaps new cars or additions to their home. They're having to make those choices now. And while Mount Pleasant and the islands and out to Awendaw, everyone thinks that everyone has a lot of money there. We really don't. And like my father was a welder when I grew up in Mount Pleasant, and my wife, and been married 51 years now.
Yes. So I say hello.
I will. Work for Southern Bell Telephone.
Sure.
So a lot of those families are still in Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, out to Awendaw, which is rural.
Right.
And so we all need to watch every nickel to make sure that we're spending money wisely, that we're taking care of our families, and we're making sure that our legal obligations are paid.
What are legal obligations right now, Representative?
Well, things like mortgages,
Oh, yeah.
insurance, car payments, all those things that you have to live in this area. I mean, I wouldn't want to have a house that was fully paid for and uninsured when you have hurricanes coming through.
Yeah.
So all those are obligations that we have. And then, of course, our children have to go to school, have to go to college. And when we borrow money to send our children to college or to school, say a private school, that's a just obligation, and it's expected that you're going to pay that back.
What is the current tax base right now, House District 112?
The tax base?
Yes.
You mean, well, it's mostly residential, and a lot of 4% assessed values.
Right.
There are a lot of 6% assessed values for hotels and commercial pieces of property.
Right.
So it's a mixed bag there of things, but it's primarily residential.
So, what is the typical income for an average resident in your district?
Well, it varies a lot. On Sullivan's Island, there are higher incomes. You get into Mount Pleasant and out to Awendaw. And young people, you still have people who are making $20,000-$30,000 a year, and they have to work to make that stretch enough to pay taxes, groceries, schools, car payments, and gas. Gas, as you well know, is getting more and more expensive.
Along with groceries, I just paid $31 over at Publix just the other day. But let me ask you this. When you obviously you talk about the hotels and obviously construction going on in your district.
Right.
So what are the infrastructure projects that are going on right now in your district?
Well, we have roads being built. We have drainage being worked on. In this part of South Carolina, we have a lot of flooding. So we have to make sure that our drainage is up to speed. We have to make sure that our roads are good. We have to do all those things to make sure that storms don't damage our homes and businesses.
Right, absolutely. So let me ask you this, Representative. What is your 10-year plan that you would actually submit to the Department of Transportation to correct the backlog of maintenance and actually fix roads in your district?
Well, we're fortunate, excuse me, we're fortunate in our district because it is residential that we stay on top of our roads. But with the port and the truck traffic and a number of those things going on, in the state, we're already addressing all those things. The port has been deepened,
right.
So we're going to see the biggest ships coming into the port of Charleston, and we need to unload those ships. We need to put them on truck chassis. We need to put those on trains.
Right.
And so we're trying to do all those things to help our infrastructure last longer. But in 10 years, probably the biggest transportation improvement we're going to see is on I-26 between here and Columbia, so that we can move those trucks out and not mix in with smaller vehicle traffic. So we need to add a lane or two so that we can move those trucks, and we need to improve the railroad infrastructure so that they can get up to the inland port up around Greer.
Yes. So what is your 5-point plan for that?
Well, I don't really have personally a 5-point plan for that, but we as a house do work on and discuss transportation, getting the roads up to speed, because we have been historically a little behind, but primarily because of tourism and the port. We have to get those roads built up as quickly as possible so that we can handle not only the weight of the trucks and then the railroad, but also the number of vehicles with tourists.
Right.
And with that comes parking.
Yes.
And we need to make sure all the people who want to go to the beach can go to the beach. But the islands have a finite number of parking places, and I think in the near future we're going to have to find a way, perhaps having some parking lots further inland, and then busing people to the beach so that we don't have all the parking problems that we do have. Right now, if everyone who wanted to go to the beach went to the beach, I would say that we simply don't have enough parking places, even if you're parked up and down the roads. And we have to remember there are people who live on the islands full time, and they have a right to enjoy their homes as well as anyone else. So those are problems we need to work on.
So how many parking lots do you anticipate going more inland?
Well, I would think that there'd probably be, I don't know, probably 2 or 3. But if we had a bus that could go to hotels rather than a central lot, if people were staying at hotels, we could have a route that hit the hotels and went to the beach. And then if there were a couple of parking lots in Mount Pleasant, again, we can't turn Mount Pleasant into one big parking lot. We have to look for those areas where we can do that. And then because someone comes from Columbia or Greenville, have a lot where they can park. We can't fill up Mount Pleasant and the islands and even the city of Charleston with people wanting to go to the beach. So that's an evolving process that we're going to have to work on.
Let me ask you this, and obviously this will be a later question for Mr. Seekins when I talk with him, personally and professionally. But would you be in favor of actually busing those people from the Charleston Business Center out to the islands?
If the buses are there to handle that and a route can be established and it's profitable for the bus line to do that, I think we could. But as you well know, when people go to the beach, they want to take their cloaks and their bags and all their things and their children with their flippers and all that. And some of that is not conducive to riding a bus. So those are some things we need to further work on.
And I know, obviously, because I was just by there just the other day going over to North Mount Pleasant, but it's going to be the old D&B parking lot soon. Would that be an option as well?
Could be. Could be. It could very well be.
Wow. So let me ask you this. How would you work if you're elected with the Department of Transportation to ensure that all residents of South Carolina, not only the island residents, have the same rights and privileges of parking along the state-owned right-of-ways in our beach communities?
Well, and that's something right now that they do park on state-owned rights-of-way. And then certainly the beaches are public.
Right.
Everyone has a right to go to the beach. But as I said, at some point, full is full.
Right.
So we have to find alternative methods of getting people to the beach and with all their beach necessities, let's say, so that they can enjoy the beach and their car can be parked safely. And it could be that if people are staying in hotels, that bus route, and of course smarter people than me would have to work on a bus route that would hit all those the hotels and then take people over there. Of course, as you know, a lot of people don't want to ride a bus.
Yeah.
They'd rather, if I'm going, I want to be able to go when I want and return when I want.
Yes.
But at some point, there will not be enough room for all the people that want to go to the beach and park a car. For example, when I was young, long time ago, when I was young, there were 2,500 people in Mount Pleasant. Well, now there are nearly 100,000. Wow. And when all those people, and we had one high school for the longest time, and now we've got 2 high schools. And when all those young people want to go to the beach, all the tourists want to go to the beach, we can't pave over all of Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms and say, park where you want. We have people that live there. So it is good for the business, for tourists to go to the islands. But at some point, there's going to be a tipping point where that one car isn't going to be able to find a place to park. And then after that, all the rest of the cars won't be able to find a place to park. They're parking on state rights of way now. So, it's at some point though, it's going to be full.
S40. You are actually voted against public parking on Isle of Palms within the right of way. Looking back then to now, do you have some sort of change of heart?
No, not really. I said then, as I say now, at some point, the islands are going to be full. Now, the biggest point in S40 that I made was I didn't think the state should have gotten in the middle of running the town of Isle of Palms or Sullivan's Island. The state doesn't come down and tell Charleston how to handle their parking. And that's why there are elected officials in Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island.
Sure.
You know, and the highway department can't make fewer cars. And the highway department isn't going to answer when tourists walk through people's yards, they drive up in their front yards, they park all over where they shouldn't be. It's not the state who's going to come down and say, well, I'm sorry that car drove over your shrubs. But the town of Isle, or the city of Isle of Palms and the towns of Sullivan's Island will have to answer those calls. And that's why they have elected governments.
Let me ask you this. And okay, do you think it's okay to charge $100 for a minor parking violation when the statewide average is $30?
Again, you know, there's a cost to doing business.
Yeah.
When a car has to be towed, it costs money, and that's what those tickets pay for.
Isn't that contrary to the United States and South Carolina Constitution's excessive fines clause?
I don't know.
Let me ask you, how should the state remove illegal encroachments into the state roads and right-of-ways on, obviously, our roads here in the Low Country?
Well, the Department of Transportation said it was okay to park on the rights of way, and there, as I understand, when I go over to the Isle of Palms, they're parking on the rights of way.
Why do you believe that the Isle of Palms has authority to block access on state roads to the general public to access those public beaches?
Well, they don't have authority to do that. When they did do it last year during the pandemic, you know, everyone, the federal government was making a big deal about keeping people from gathering, and they thought they were doing the right thing.
You represent the majority of your constituents, obviously, that live in Mount Pleasant. Don't you have a duty, Mr. Bustos, to protect the rights to access public roads, public right-of-ways, and public beaches?
They were protected. People can go to the beach. People, as I said, people are parking on the rights of way now, and they're parking on private property. They park all over.
How would you, if re-elected, limit the insurance, for instance, of golf cart parking only spaces on our state road right-of-ways and ensure that for any such parking authorized or allowed, non-residents will receive reciprocal rights to parking for vehicles?
Well, they have that now.
How would you support action to ensure the safe bike lanes are established on our roadways that lead to the beaches, including your district, the Isle of Palms Connector?
Well, again, the SCDOT restriped the connector, and they are protected. You know, it's probably, they took out the emergency lane. Probably a more important question to be was, how are we protecting the ability of emergency vehicles to get to the Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island more so than bicycles and other lanes? You know, now if an emergency vehicle goes down and everyone is obligated to move to the side, where are they going? Into the bike lane. Before, there were bike lanes, and then there was an emergency vehicle lane in the center. And SCDOT came and did away with that. So now, if an emergency vehicle comes over, the drivers are required to move to the side into the bicycle lanes. So, you know, I don't think anyone's been hit on a bicycle, but there have been golf cart accidents.
How many golf cart accidents?
Well, I don't know the total number, but I mean, I saw one on the Isle of Palms coming off the bridge.
Wow.
Person came off the bridge and knocked the golf cart all the way onto its side.
Wow.
So, I mean, I've seen that personally.
So, with all of this, what is quality like right now in your district?
Well, I think the quality of life is good, and I think the people who live on the island, I think the people who live in the older part of Mount Pleasant, where visitors go, they bear up under the idea that this is a great place to live. People want to come and see it, and Mount Pleasant and the islands have always been very welcoming communities, and to the extent that they can, they're going to make everyone welcome, and they do. But like I say, at some point during beach season, is every parking spot taken? I'm going to say yes. And just like downtown Charleston, if you want to go shopping on King Street and you can't find a parking place, you have to keep riding around till you find one, or you find a space in a parking lot. And it's the same at the beach.
Let me move to some other issues. How do you make 112 competitive today so that you can make South Carolina better tomorrow?
Make it more competitive today?
Yes, sir.
I think by making it, by continuing to support the businesses and making sure that the citizens have the type things they need to live available to them. Obviously they can't have everything, but within a certain driving distance, most things are available. We build a lot of houses. We're primarily a residential and personal support, family support type district. We don't have heavy industry. We do have a lot of retail, but that is in support of the residents. We have restaurants, again, in support of the residents and the tourists. And the tourists, I don't think when they go to Sullivan Island, Isle of Palms, Mount Pleasant, the hotels, that they want for anything. The mayors have done a great job of trying to make sure everyone's welcomed, even out to Awendaw. Miriam Green, great lady, and she works hard making sure that people who go out there feel welcome. They don't have hotels, but a lot of people go out there. They just want to see rural South Carolina.
A couple of questions. How many homes in your district have been built at a fairly consistent rate?
How many have been built at a consistent rate?
Yes, sir.
Well, you have to go back in time. Right now, I believe there are probably around 40 or so thousand residences. But, we have a lot of apartment buildings. We have a lot of single-family dwellings.
Yes, sir.
We have almost 100,000 people. And then we have all the grocery stores, filling stations, the retail outlets to support that population. And then you layer on top of that all the tourists that come, and they place a demand on the system. But I think that there's sufficient there to provide for everyone. So I think it's done well. We will in Mount Pleasant and the islands and Awendaw, we're never going to have factories. We're never going to have that type of heavy industry. We're driven by tourism and then residential support.
What residential support is needed right now?
Well, we have to keep an eye on schools.
Oh, yes.
Because we can overwhelm schools. Mount Pleasant used to have Moultrie High School and Lang High School, and a number of the kids went to Bishop England.
Sure.
Now we have Awendaw, we have Lucy Beckham, we have a number of middle schools, Lang and Moultrie, and of course Bishop England's over on the island now. And then we have elementary schools on Sullivan's Island now throughout Mount Pleasant. And we have to keep building those as necessary. Lincoln High School closed, and the kids went to Awendaw.
That's right.
But, again, as we expand out that way, I can foresee there needing to be yet another high school.
So, and that's the thing, Mr. Bustos, Representative Bustos. A lot of people are actually moving out to Awendaw, McClellanville. So, let me ask you, how do you get Mount Pleasant back to unbridled growth?
Well, let me make sure you said, how do I get it back to unbridled growth?
Yeah, I mean,
how do we put the genie back in the bottle?
Basically, yes, sir. I'm articulating wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay. Mount Pleasant has been, I felt, cutting edge on, well, let me back up. Sullivan's Island, Palms, they're pretty much full.
Yes.
There's a finite amount of buildable land there, and that's it. People are moving out to Awendaw and McClellanville because Mount Pleasant itself is getting full. How do you get it back? I don't think you can get it back, because you can, in Mount Pleasant right now, the real estate is so popular, and it's the demand, the price that it demands. People feel good about what they're paying. You see older houses like mine, the one we live in. A track hole will show up one day. Next day the house is gone, and then a big house is being built. But the town of Mount Pleasant was very forward-looking and made lots. You could only put 40% of the lot could be covered with impervious surface, and that's something to help with flooding, make sure the drainage isn't overwhelmed, and it's tough to build in Mount Pleasant. It is tough to build, but then again, it makes for a quality product, whether it's commercial building or residential building, and it retains its value. And now we're even seeing where some of the older homes and the lots are fetching millions of dollars for some of those houses. Years and years and years ago, probably cost $18,000 to build.
That's right.
And it's retaining its value because the towns and Mount Pleasant, the islands, and now out to Awendaw are being very thoughtful about how they develop. But we do have a lot of young people and retirees who don't want to live in a single family home. They want to live in an apartment. And so that type of housing has to be produced to accommodate those folks.
How many of those need to be built right now for those retirees, which is part of your district? Just like demographics.
Well, I think we've got with the boulevard and we have a lot of bed and breakfast type things, and we have ADUs all over. So I think we're accommodating that. But as we have children that go off to college and want to come back and live in Mount Pleasant, it's going to be an ongoing thing where those type of accommodations are going to have to be built for our young people, for older people who get to the point where I just don't want to take care of a yard.
Yeah.
And I physically can't take care of a yard, and they're going to want to sell their house and move into an apartment or a townhouse. But when they sell that house, a young person who's just coming home from school isn't going to be able to buy that, because the value has appreciated. And right now, getting a home loan is 7%. From what I understand for mortgage rates, that puts home ownership out of the reach of a lot of young people until they've had a job and they can establish credit and they can do all those things. You know, the first house that my wife and I bought in the 70s was 14% interest on a home loan. And I hope we never get back to that. But, you know, and we're seeing now the number of sales every month falling.
Wow.
So we've got to get that back where we can have some equilibrium and a mix of housing for older people, working age people, young people, the working poor, and people who just, for whatever reason, don't want a house.
Yeah.
You know, they want an apartment. But to be a community, we have to accommodate all those, and we're always going to have each one of those demographics.
So what is the median, I know you have to run, but what is the median home price right now in your district?
The median home price, I'd say, is probably in the 70s or 80s.
Wow.
70 or 80,000.
So how many of those, let's say for instance, retirees are just moving now into apartments or condos versus just buying their own houses?
Mm-hmm. How many?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure, and the reason is we have people who are retiring in the Northeast.
Yes.
We have people moving down to South Carolina because the climate's good. We have people who have sold homes in Florida who are moving into South Carolina, and they want to be close to the beach.
Right.
So we have not only our residents who are growing older and returning home, we have people moving in, you know, that want to leave the problems of the South or the Northeast, who, you know, right after a storm in Florida, they want to move up a little bit. So we have those numbers that are a little bit harder to predict.
Let me ask you this. What communities and neighborhoods in your district, District 112, need to be protected right now?
Protected in what way?
Say, for instance, I know that it's not your district, but let's say, for instance, 6 Mile, 10 Mile, going out towards Awendaw. How would you protect those neighborhoods?
You mean from crime or from weather?
Oh, no. From basically gentrification, or, you know, what's going on right now with growth.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, a lot of the areas there were older, minority neighborhoods were established. You know, even in the old part of Mount Pleasant, there are houses where that were little enclaves of minorities, and you know, they're protected because they're not treated worse than anyone else, and they're protected because if you maintain their property values, they get to enjoy that if they decide to sell their property, and they've been living in a house for 30, 40 years, it's paid for, they get to enjoy the same thing. People don't pay less for their property in those areas than anyone else. And that's how you protect it. You help them maintain their property values. And it's the same, and the same type things are happening. On King Street, where I live, is just a block or so away from the old Jenny Moore Elementary School. And, that was a street of primarily minority families who live right there. Well, they're getting a lot of money for their houses now when they choose to leave. And no one's forcing them to leave. They're able to stay there, and I think that's a good thing. And everyone coexists in that area very peacefully.
And what's the property value there right now?
I would say, along King Street there, there's probably, like I was saying, a little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house sold for $1.25 million 2 blocks away. And I feel very certain that house will be taken down and a new house built there, but that's the type of thing that those folks who've lived there, even down Pitt Street, who have lived there for 30, 40 years, paid their mortgage, they're living there, and if they get old enough to say, I want to sell my property and move to an apartment, they'll be able to do that.
So where is it's so many different definitions about it, but where is, I would say this, attainable housing right now in your district?
Attainable housing, the town of Mount Pleasant tried to do that, it wasn't 6 Mile Road. It was up off of, going up off of Highway 41. And it quickly became very expensive. The market drives that. The market really drives that. And if you try to make something that's someone can pay for, that is just out of college, it's going to be as big as this table. And that's, of course, we have apartments. We have a number of apartments throughout Mount Pleasant. And there are a number of people now who are turning above their garages and different things into ADUs, accessory dwelling units, that are renting for much less. But, townhouses now are very expensive. And like, for instance, my daughter, she's divorced, she's raising her son. She could not afford to buy a townhouse, so, we had to buy the townhouse because we could, her mother and I could afford the down payment and everything, and then we rent it to her. So families have to take care of families. And as I'm sure you know, in the minority community, the African American community has always been very family oriented, has done that for years. That they try to take care of family members, and we now are learning to do that as well.
Quickly, let me go to obviously education. What is the retention rate right now for teachers in your District 112?
Well, again, it's tough because it's hard for them to have a place to live. And then they have to drive a long way to get to school. And gas prices now, because of the national situation and our lack of energy independence, gas is extremely expensive, and those teachers have to drive back and forth. We raised the salary to where we wanted to have starting teachers around $40,000. That's not enough. And we're probably going to have to do more so that those teachers can have a quality of life. They can go to work, they can go home and have a quality of life and not have to drive an hour away to find a place to live. And so there's that issue.
Let me ask you, should the teacher, I know this is very obvious to you, but should the teacher pay raise be in the average 5% over the next 2 years?
I don't know if that's enough. I don't know that that's enough. We have to, we have to go back and look at that every year.
Wow.
And I saw something the other day where schools, in order to have another person working in the office, they had the kids out selling cookies or candy or something, and it was in an effort to raise money to have another person working on staff. Now, my personal feeling is that we shouldn't be sending children out to do that, to pay for staff. We should be finding the money if the staff is needed to pay that salary.
And speaking of which, another big topic is class sizes. So let me ask you, small classes will raise the student achievement by what percentage in your mind?
Well, I'm not sure. When I was in school, we had an average of about 30 kids in school. We try not to have that now, but parents need to be involved with their kids and make sure they do homework, and parents share some of that responsibility for making sure that their kids are educated. As I said, my father was not a high school graduate. He was a welder in the Navy Yard, but he made certain my brother and I had college educations. My brother went straight to Carolina. I went in the Army, but I used the GI Bill in service to pay for both my undergraduate and graduate degree. And every time I came home on leave, my father was, "Where are you? Where are you on your education?" And I think and parents want to be involved, and parents want their children to be educated, and I think it's important that we keep parents on the same side of the table as the teacher, in our educational process. We do not want to push parents off and say, "We got it. School's got it. Government schools got it." We've got to have the parents, the teachers, and all the support staff working to educate our children.
And lastly, Mr. Representative Bustos, the Palm Republic. Why do you support them?
The Palm Republic, everyone seemed to have their hair on fire about that. That was something that was done in good nature.
Okay.
The Palm Republic doesn't have meetings every week. It was done as a good-natured thing, and everyone, a number of people got chuckles out of it. They've never asked for any money. They've never asked for any favors from the government. They've never done anything like that. There's just a bunch of people who got together and were having some fun with it. And was it misinterpreted? Yeah, I guess, because there are some people without a sense of humor that saw it as some existential threat to their being. And it's not.
Are they a threat to the islands?
No, of course not. It's just people, when they did that,
Yes, sir.
it was just a fun thing. Now, have they had any meetings since? Have they had any meetings since? You keep your finger on the pulse of everything.
I do.
So have they had any meetings since?
Have you been in any of those meetings?
I ask you first. Have you heard? You keep your finger on the pulse of what goes on.
I do.
So have there been any meetings?
What was done in good nature in your mind when it comes to the Palm Republic?
No, don't change the subject. Answer my question. Have you heard of any meetings?
No, you talked about good nature. No, what's good nature about the public, Palmer Public, that is?
Well, it's fun. It was done in fun. It wasn't done to overthrow the town government. It was done in fun.
So how do you articulate that to the residents in your district?
Well, most of the people did think it was all done in fun. There were a few who didn't live on the island, who thought it was they had some ulterior motive. And there was none. It was something done in fun.
State Representative Joe Bustos, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin, folks.
Well, thank you, Quintin. I look forward to talking to you again after the election.
Sure, of course.
And I'll look out like this and say I would appreciate your support and your vote on November 8th. And my email and phone is out there everywhere. If you have a question, give me a call. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.